Hey, hello, everybody. I think we are live, and let's do this thing. Glad to have some of you already here and waiting. That's pretty awesome. And I'm going to try to share my screen because one of the things that I wanted to talk about has to do with a tweet. And let's see if I can do this. So, you guys have probably noticed if you follow me that I appreciate Carter Thomas, and he posted this tweet recently, and it kind of has to do with some of my thoughts I want to talk about right now. And he says bear markets punish people who are early and reward people who are late. And I feel like that's a good thing to hear. Recently, I've been talking about how I'm currently trying to be patient myself, and I feel like it's to my advantage to wait and basically see how bad things out rather than just jump in. And I think Carter Thomas is kind of saying the same thing here. And kind of like my last video, one of the main things that I'm paying attention to, I'm really guess it has to do with a question. The question is, what are the biggest things that matter? And and that helps me decide what to pay attention to. And one of those big things that I think matters is the Fed. I think the Fed has a lot of power, and what the Fed does affects the markets. And so some of my focus is to the Fed. And I think that the Fed is they've been hawkish, which means that they are basically trying to push down prices effectively. They're trying to combat inflation. And one of the tools that they have to address that is raising interest rates. Rising interest rates basically makes it so that taking out loans is more expensive, and that helps the asset prices go down. When it costs you more money to buy those assets, the asset prices tend to go down, and it encourages less buying. And that still seems to be playing out. And I think that I'm pretty conservative and really willing to wait. I think there's a lot of people that think, and even the market in general seems to feel that the Fed is going to reverse. They're going to um, raise interest rates high, and next year the interest rates that they're projecting, which they're projecting interest rates a little over 5%. The market's actually saying that they're thinking by the end of 2023, interest rates will be closer to 4%. The market basically doesn't believe the Fed. I currently think that the Fed is likely to act closer to what they're saying than the market is currently backing in. Obviously, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think they might be tightening a little bit harder than than some people are expecting. And I basically think that because inflation is a real problem. And I think the Fed is looking back to other times where we've had to fight inflation, and they've seen how hard it is to do. There's been times, this is basically the 60s and the 70s, and then they didn't really fight inflation well until the early 80s, and they ended up raising rates almost to 20% to basically, the way I think of it, it proved to the market we really are going to fight inflation. And it took such an extreme response from the Fed to basically show the market that they're not kidding. And that's important, I think, because the market kind of has to believe the Fed. Because if the market doesn't and they think inflation's coming, the market's going to continue to buy because they think the prices are going to continue to rise. And it ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy, where because if there's no trust in the Fed, if they don't trust the Fed's going to bring inflation down, then they still think it's time to buy. And if they continue to buy, then prices keep rising. And the Fed basically has to say, no, we're really not kidding. we're going to be really hard on you, and it will not be better to buy today. It will be better to buy tomorrow. And as long as the Fed's in that mindset, which I'm kind of trying to argue, I think they're actually pretty serious about that, because in the past, when they haven't been as serious about it, inflation never got under control until they just really went down on inflation in a pretty intense way. And I'm kind of expecting them to learn from their past. You know, everyone remembers the relatively recent past, and we don't tend to repeat the same mistakes that we did the last time. We end up making new mistakes. And one of the mistakes I think that's still really in the mind of the Fed is not to too quickly lower interest rates, basically, to keep tightening until it's really bad, and until inflation's under control, and until people don't think that prices are going to go up tomorrow. And let me stop sharing here. So I think those are some thoughts on my mind. And like I said, what, like, I'm talking about blockchain and cryptocurrency. Why does the Fed matter? Well, the Fed just affects the macro economy. And I think if people are, if their assets are going down, jobs are probably not going to be any easier to have. People are probably not going to be, businesses are going to have a harder time paying employees just tons of money and continuing to expand. They kind of want to make it hard on the economy, and I think that's basically going to affect crypto. And I don't think we're over yet. And another interesting thing is it tends to you don't I think in people's minds, they think that when the Fed starts lowering rates, that's when the market rebounds, but that's typically not the case. They have to lower rates for quite a while before the market really turns around and has something to show for it, like before the market really turns positive. Let me show you this graph here. So this is just a graph of the S&P 500 and the interest rates. The interest rates are in red. So if the red's basically going higher, that means the interest rates are being raised. And if they're going lower, that means, the interest rates are going down. And you can see a correlation. It's not what I feel a lot of people would expect. That people would expect, oh, they're lowering interest rates, the market's going to go up. But if you look at history, they're lowering interest rates, and this is just the S&P 500, but look, it's going down with those interest rates. The same thing happened over here in 2000. They're lowering rates and the market's going down. And we're still raising rates. So we need to raise rates. They tend to hold, like raise rates and hold for a little while and then start lowering, and that's what the Fed's saying they're going to do. So I'm expecting them to raise rates, and then we're going to have something like this over here, where they're raising rates, they find a point where they decide to hold for a bit, and then they start lowering. But it's likely that when they start lowering it, the markets are, the economy's still scared. There's still fear. They're not wanting to expand. And really all of this just means to me, it's suggesting time. It's suggesting that the bottom may not be in, with just looking at one of the big players that I think matters in deciding. And it just comes back to patience, and it comes back to that tweet by Carter Thomas, like the bear markets punish people who are early and reward people who are late. And so, like, what am I doing about this? So for me, one of the valuable things that I've found to think about is what don't I know? And one of the things I don't know is the timing of the bottom, how low it's going to go. How do I make money anyway? So not a lot has really changed for me in my current strategy. I've already bought at roughly these levels, probably a little bit higher than this. And I'm really not excited about buying unless we drop massively from here. And so I'm in, let's wait. We could have another year before we bottom. And that's a rough guess, but that would be enough for them to raise interest rates, hold, and then start coming down. And so it might actually tie really well. We'll see with the Bitcoin halving partway through 2024 when the market bottoms, and it may actually correlate well with that same typical pattern of cryptocurrency. We'll see if that ends up working out. But I see a chance for lower lows coming. And one other thing I wanted to talk about is the tendency. Let me go back to my screen again. So the tendency of the way crypto tends to work. So typically, when times are bad, Bitcoin drops, Bitcoin and Ethereum drop, alt tokens drop more. And the reverse tends to happen when times are good. Bitcoin goes up, Ethereum goes up, alt tokens go up even more. But the thing is, the alt tokens they're more volatile, they're more speculative. After bear markets, not all alt tokens make it. And it tends to be oftentimes the new projects that really run high when times turn good. And so to bring that in a little bit more specific to our ecosystem, the Hex ecosystem, I would expect, doesn't mean this is going to happen. This is based on that idea. It would be likely that Hex drops more than Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I would say that since Hedron and ICSA are built on Hex, it's likely they drop more than Hex. So you've got a drop in Hex that's more than Bitcoin and Ethereum, and Bitcoin and Ethereum are probably going to drop more than a lot of things outside the market, just because it's crypto and they're volatile, and because it's very hard to quantify the innate value of even Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's very emotional based, I would argue, and so they're going to drop a lot. If Hex is going to drop even more, Hedron and ICSA are likely to drop even more. And so when I'm looking at for example, what's happening with Hedron and ICSA right now, this is not surprising to me. Like, they are over dropping even Hex. And this is pretty standard. The question for me is, are Hedron and ICSA going to be able to withstand another year of difficult markets possibly? And if they are, they're going to come out the other side with a community that still loves the project. If there's still utility there and reason to use them, there's a chance that they're those really good runners. And this is going to be a very testing time. I think this particular bear market for crypto is going to wash out tokens like it's usually really bad. I think this one might even be worse than normal because the surrounding economy is arguably worse than before, and it's going to create an even more extreme situation. But it can give the upside is it can give a real opportunity to people that don't get bored, that pay attention, that pick those good projects that are way undervalued, and have the real runners when times are good. And that's some of my really basic thoughts. Those are just kind of big picture stuff, tendencies of the market, things I'm paying attention to, and ultimately it makes me conservative, and it makes me just want to wait and basically save money, grow the bag of potential opportunity for buying more later in time when we're probably closer to the bottom. And I'll probably look to long-term trends being broken. And I'll be looking like, is the Fed still tightening? Are we done with this bear cycle in the macro economy, at least for a little while? That's going to be when I'm a lot more interested. But I see that time-wise, there's a good chance that we're not there yet. I don't know if there is a chance that that has happened. Like, and that's why I've already bought. We've already dropped so much. I was willing to put some in, but realistically, I do think we're gonna have another, the chance for more further down. And, so I'm just waiting and holding, and it's so for other people, I would say, even if, you don't have money to save, save. It does like, if it's $100, like, it still might be a good idea if crypto's an opportunity that you like, um, even if it's a little bit, it's better than nothing, and you can use the time potentially to your own advantage. So, I do wanna answer some questions, and so I've written some down, so see if I can highlight it. So I don't know if the chat holds from before we started. I don't think it does. Maybe it does. So I got a question from EW1. He said he has a question on the current state of Hedron and ICOSA and if significant lows are incoming. Um, so this is speculation, right? This is complete speculation. I do not know what is going to happen in the future with Hedron and ICOSA. This is my, but I'm really glad to give an educated guess. Like, what do I think is going to happen? And basically, kind of for the reasons that I said, which is basically, I think the market has a chance for going down further, and I think Hedron and ICOSA are probably going to be an extreme version of what the market does. I would not be surprised to see further down in Hedron and likely ICOSA as well. And then I got some other questions from Spirit Falcon and Firestarter 369. They asked me on Twitter, dollar cost average or all in and be done. And I will tell you, it's the same answer. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't tell you what to do. But I will tell you the all in and be done is it is the opposite of delayed gratification. Um, and it's like the delayed gratification in this instance could be waiting. And I personally don't see a strong argument for going all in and waiting. And you can just look to the past year. Would that have been a good idea to go all in and just be done? I don't think so. And it makes me really, you're going to miss out on potential opportunity if you do that. It doesn't mean that now's not a bad time to put some in, but to go all in, if that means that you can't go all in later if we drop another 50%, and that's gonna be something you regret if that happens, then I would say I would be very careful going all in. Um, and basically, the dollar cost averaging is probably a better idea. We are down a lot. If you can dollar cost average now, it's obviously a lot better than it's been the past 6 months. Like we're at some a lot of tokens are near their all-time lows, and you might have something to show for it. And then a lot of these questions are similar, but this is great just to hear what people are thinking about, and I'm really glad to try to answer the best I can with what people care about. So the same type of question from Alex Sutton. Why are Hedron and ICOSA performing so badly? And it's basically, I'm going to repeat myself again. It's not surprising that this Hex is a derivative of sorts of Ethereum. Hex is built on Ethereum. Hedron's built on Hex. It's not surprising to me that while times are bad, it's underperforming. And it's the typical response. This is a typical reaction. But also realize, like, the cool thing about Hedron is that it came out in a bear market to start with. And so it just has a lot of potential to run if it can make it through the next year and a half. Which for me, I would like to continue to see HSIs go through the HSI buyback and be able to be auctioned off. after a year and a half, because that I'm a little bit concerned if we stop those HSIs going through the buyback, it could be really hard to get the system started up again. And if it gets so slow and boring that people stop using the system, that's going to be a little bit concerning to me. So far, so good, but we are, we're this far into the system. It's kind of cool that the HSIs, in my opinion, don't come back. When you give your HSI to the HSI buyback, it's kind of an advantage that it takes 90 days for them to show up in the auction, because it kind of slows the process down and helps it sustain time potentially better. I think it's actually an indirect benefit of the system, because we want HSIs to be in the system at the end of the bear market. Let's see what else. Let me now go back to the chat and see if I can have some more questions here. So, okay, so we did that one. This is Alex Sutton's question. I already answered that one. Let's see here. Thanks, G Chambers. Yes, I'm still making videos. I kind of took a little bit of a break, but I'm still here. So, ICSA thoughts from Tone Tony. Kind of talked about that a little bit. I'm not happy that ICSA has broken parity as much as it has. It's hard for me to quantify that, like how big of a deal is it? Like, one of the things I look to is if we have HSIs going back to the buyback, and we still are, even though the parity's pretty bad. Like, if you go to hexmodel.com, I'll share my screen here just so you guys can see this too. Let's see, I think. So hexmodel.com, I don't know how well you can see this, but like the ICSA price is 51.2% below the theoretical R value. And let's see if I can. So here's the chart that shows that as well. Like, we were holding along at the parity value of ICSA really well. And, as the T-share rate was going up, the hex per ICSA was just continually going up. And that was awesome. And I was telling you, I think I did like 3 videos saying, I think the ICSA parity is going to break to the downside when these auctions start. And it appears I was pretty correct, because we were all the way up at 34.5 hex per ICSA roughly when the auction started. And now we're all the way down at 16.9 hex per ICSA. And I think my thought on this is, I think there's a chance that as the HSIs slow, like the HSIs in the auction slow, which you can see they are slowing down, there's a chance that early February, late January, we could start seeing this start going back up. Because the reason I think, if there's less HSIs in the auction, or at least less T-shares worth of them, there's potentially less of them going through the buyback and potentially adding to less sell pressure. Although when the R value is this low, I'm not sure how much arbitrage there really is in any way in them giving their HSI to the HSI buyback in order to sell the ICSA on the market. That means they would have had to have had a pretty good deal on their HSI in order to make money that way. What I do think is happening is a lot of the Hedron, specifically, yield in ICSA. So the Hedron staking pool, of course, that pool gets ICSA as yield. I think particularly that pool, people are, since the stake lengths are smaller in a number of reasons, I think they are taking their ICSA, kind of seeing it as free money and dumping it on the market, and it's pushing down the ICSA value. And that's not going to change. Like, going into January, that's going to still probably be a real thing. There may be yet less yield because there's less auctions, and so maybe less sell pressure from that. So it could still mean that we might see ICSA start coming up. And then also on February 12th, there's a pretty good auction day with, I think, 6,500 roughly T shares of HSIs being auctioned. That's a lot bigger. That's the second biggest auction day, and it could mean a lot of yield. So it could mean that that people are looking forward to the February, I think it's February 12th day to buy their ICOSA because they feel like they're going to get a lot of yield for it. It could add to some buy pressure. We will see if how this works out. One good thing about all these projects is that it's all algorithmic. Like, it doesn't matter how out of whack the system gets necessarily. It's always it still is balanced. Like, it's not printing ICOSA yield from nothing. Uh, it's all, everything's algorithmic, and it's not going to probably implode, which is a concern sometimes for me with algorithmic tokens is or tokens with yield. Sometimes that yield isn't, it's like a guaranteed yield or something, and the system destroys itself trying to guarantee a particular yield. But fortunately, ICOSA and Hedron, the way the yields are set up, it's always proportionate to another action. Another action is what makes that yield. If that action doesn't happen, the yield doesn't happen either. And so no matter how like crazy out of whack the price gets, the yield people are getting is still proportionate to actions within the system itself. And so it can continue. It won't completely implode like Luna. It won't implode for the reason Luna does. Like I said, what I see potentially imploding it is related to, I want to see the HSIs continue to come through the auction, continuing, because the winning bid on those HSIs is in Hedron, and that Hedron gets burned. And we have a lot of people with Hedron bonus multiples, and we basically, I think, need to start burning a lot of the extra Hedron in the system. I have a feeling, by the way, that 2024, 2025, we may actually see some real the inflation of Hedron may start really slowing. I think there's a number of people that have their stakes ending around 2024 because they're expecting that to be the next bull run and they want to have liquid hex available. But when those stakes end, if they had Hedron multiples with them, those Hedron multiples end as well. And you can't restake and still get your Hedron multiple. And I think over time, those bonuses, Hedron bonus multiples, are going to be going away. And one of the questions is, can Hedron last long enough to reap the disinflation, the massively disinflationary aspects of those stakes ending? And we will see. Let's see what other questions we got here. So what's your game plan for icosahedron going forward after analyzing the system? I'm still watching the system, like I'm saying. It's not a home run. The system's not a home run. This is not an obvious, the price is down, but it's just going to completely dominate it. I'm so sure of it. I'm still glad to be getting the yield. I've bought a little bit more of Hedron and ICOSA. But I'm like not necessarily wanting to add a lot proportionate wise of the crypto portfolio that I have. I still consider them pretty speculative, and I still consider them to have a really good upside. So that's a reason I'm very willing to just stake and keep what I've got going working for me. Let's see here. So he says, lots of artwork. Any idea when? I don't know. I don't know, Paul. Let's see. Alex Sutton. Yeah, I agree. I've also heard when the Fed does finally pivot, the real crash happens a few months after. That's what tends to happen. If I can show you another chart here. Let me stop sharing my screen so I can pull that up. this is I think I actually showed this to you already, but that chart with the yield compared to the S&P 500 is valuable to me. It just shows what might happen anyway. So sub penny hex is looking more and more likely. What do you think? Definitely possible. Um, one thought on that is, uh, like that's a pretty big drop. Like, that was over a 50% drop from here, which is totally possible. But it's still a pretty big percentage drop, and so I don't know. We'll see, and it could have to do also with liquidity and where the walls are, and if something happens like, I think I've got some liquidity graphs here. We'll just talk about this. See if I can share this with you again. Let's look at liquidity. So this is the Hex USDC liquidity, and basically, price this way is Hex price going up. Price this way is Hex price going down. And the taller these blue lines are, the more liquidity's there, and basically the more someone has to buy or sell in order to move price. And so you can see that as we go down this way, like if we fall back below the bottom of this wall right here, it doesn't take very much sell pressure to push the price down. And there's a chance that we get outside of where the majority of the liquidity is, and then the price can really, really get pushed down. It's a disincentive if that was to happen for large sellers to sell, because they're going to have so much slippage, and because it's going to push the price so far down. Like who wants to lose, to have a lot of slippage? Who wants to lose a lot of their value? But the potential, if someone market sells for that, for the current liquidity to absorb it, is really low. There's a chance that if we break outside this wall, for example, that price could really go down. And if there's enough fear at the same time that we have low liquidity, I mean, 1 cent hex is really possible, especially for like a spike down. And then I wanted to talk about, so this is the hex. That's hex ETH, which is kind of a similar location, although it looks a little bit different. This is the Hedron liquidity, and you can see this. So you can see it's info.uniswap. You can look at the liquidity for any particular token sold on Uniswap. So this one is, let me make sure I have this right. So I think this one is, as we go this way, Hedron price is going down. As we go this way, Hedron price is going up. So right now for Hedron, with this pair, which is the Hex Hedron pair, we actually have a lot less liquidity above us than below us. So we have all of this liquidity right here, which I believe a lot of it may be from the OA, actually holding our price up relative to Hex. And which is just interesting to watch liquidity and see what's going on. And let's hey, RH Max, thanks for being here. Pete, can we handle any more? I'm ready to handle more. And I want to do my best, knowing I don't know what's going to happen, to help you guys be prepared and make the best of the situation. So I'm ready to handle more. Let's see here. How low do I think Hex will go? That's really hard to say. Kind of what I'm already answering. In the 1 cent would not surprise me. It would not freak me out. Pete, I'm a horrible salesman because out of 100 people I've told to buy Hex, told about Hex, 2 have bought. The funny thing is, Yeah, it's really weird. I never really tell people to buy. I only I've told people what I'm doing and why, and then they wanna buy. It's interesting. I try not to sell people because, I want people to get in because they understand the fundamentals, and in one conversation, like, it has to be an individual decision with their own individual portfolio, their own individual risk tolerance. Like, there's so many individual aspects that come to investing well. It's really hard for me to feel like I've done a good job so that because I have people have gotten in projects because I've gotten in, and then I've watched them sell at the very worst time ever, and that hurts me. And I've felt that's because they didn't understand, like, the fundamentals, and they didn't, uh, believe in the project, and they were just copying what someone like me, because I said that I liked it, they then think it's good, and I really wanna, um I almost undersell things. Like, if you get in, it is your because you want it, you see potential here, you have a long time horizon, like, give them all the reasons not to do it, and if they still do it, then it tends to work out a little bit better. How low can Hedron go? That is a hard one. Any of the like, how high can Hedron go? How low can Hedron go? Any of the specific price targets are, almost unknowable, and but the way I look at it as, based on I look at it personally from a more fundamental standpoint. So what are the big things that matter? What are they pushing things towards? It looks like they're pushing price down. So without knowing what that will actually equal in price, I can still take advantage of the opportunity because I can see that we're there's a chance that we're going to go lower. I don't know how much lower, but just the knowing that there's pressure pushing price down helps me win without knowing the exact price, if that makes sense. And there's all kinds of technical analysis. You can draw trend lines and have educated guesses. But I don't really care too much. I feel like I can win. My goal is to make money. Having buying at a particular price um doesn't really make me make money as much as knowing when to buy, which isn't it's just more of a timing thing to me and more of a fundamental question than a specific price question. And there's not a ton of history with Hedron to look to know how low it can go. But we're not breaking all-time lows in Hedron, especially versus Hex right now. So we will see. But I'm not freaked out about the price. Um, let's see what other questions we've got here. Oh yeah, this is a good one. Uh, HSIs will be the go-to for T-share acquisitions. I do feel there's a chance that some of the best, dollar per hex prices, so some of the lowest buys for hex during the bear market very well may be especially large HSI purchases. Um, to In a couple hours, we're going to have a 10 million hex HSI coming up for auction, and that's a lot of Hedron. If you were to match its, what is it, $200,000 value in Hedron. $200,000 of Hedron is a lot of supply of Hedron. There's not a lot of people that have that much Hedron. And it's possible that um they get a pretty good deal. And I see that some of those bigger players are going to have a chance to get Hex at a really good deal. It's going to be locked for 15 years. That's kind of the beauty of it. But I agree. Okay. I think the bull run will be back when the Fed quits raising rates. I think based on history, like I said, I think it's going to be when they quit raising rates, hold it for a little while, start lowering. And if you look at the past, like, it sometimes takes a year before the market rebounds. So I think it could be delayed from when they start lowering interest rates. Okay. Are you still confident long term, say 25, 26 hydrogen? So I want to be really clear. Like confident is an unspecific word. I'm confident in holding hedron and ICOSA, given that I'm not all in, that it's a portion of my portfolio. I'm willing to risk a portion for the potential return, but I've never been confident. I've never been confident that hedron and ICOSA are going to last through the bear market. It's been a speculative investment that I'm very glad to be a part of. I think the intentions are good. It's adding utility. Um, it's a really good thing. And like there's no moral or ethical reasons I wouldn't want to play it, but I don't know what's going to happen. And I've actually tried to like unabashedly say this is a speculative thing. And so confident. I'm confidently in it, but there's a reason that I've only put a portion of my portfolio in it, and so it's kind of hopefully that makes sense. Um, People talking about Zen. I don't have a ton to say. Zen to me is still an interesting project that I'm really curious to see how it does over time. I'm not YOLOing in on Zen. Um, uh, Lots of Zen arguments. I don't, let's see. I'm kind of reading after I click them. I don't think those that earn millions of hex in interest per month care about slippage in their yield. Fair enough. I think some do and some may not as much. Um, I mean, I think all things being equal, it's pretty objective that they don't want slippage. It's more money without it. How much do they care? That might be another question. So, let's see here. I'm still a little bit sick. Let's see here. Okay, here's a good question. Spirit Falcon, being my first bear, is it actually different this time, or has it always been doom and gloom during bears? So I first got in crypto in 2015, and that was a bear market at that time. And I feel that things have changed over time. Um, Crypto has matured a little bit. There was a fear of crypto dying was I feel more of a fear than it is now. I think people, because it's lasted through so many bear runs, they don't think the idea is going to die anymore. And it's I see a lot more projects willing to continue to invest in themselves, invest in community to build an add-on uh than in a bear market than I'm used to seeing, and that's been somewhat encouraging. Um so I would say for me this is not abnormal. But I would say that there's a chance that this bear market is not over. And I'm expecting, like, if we last for another year, I'm expecting to be one of a smaller group of people still interested. Because I do feel confident that this idea is not going away. Crypto is solving a problem that I do not know how to solve better otherwise. Blockchain is solving a problem, decentralization, internet money stuff, solving a problem I do not know how to solve better otherwise, and I don't think it's going away. But it could get really, really boring, and the prices could drop a lot, potentially more than now, and we could flush some people out. And so I would say yes, it's been doom and gloom, and we've had times where like really high up people in Bitcoin, for example, that was a big thing for me a little after 2015 when some of the like big Bitcoin promoters were coming out and saying Bitcoin's a failed experiment, and that really crashed the price when Bitcoin hit $1,000 for the first time. And Uh, I don't really see that happening right now. So to me, yes, it's always been this doom and gloom. Let's see here. You guys love Zen. um, Richard Hart should launch Pulse Chain now so people can buy the dip. Uh, uh, Everyone always wants to know, of course, when is Pulse Chain going to launch? I have a feeling Richard's trying to time it with the bottom of the market, and I don't think Richard thinks he's pretty explicit about thinking the market's going to go down more. And I don't know if he wants to time it exactly with the bottom or maybe a little bit after. Just because I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to pretend to read Richard Hart's mind. I don't know that it would be in the best interest of us all to launch right now. If we launch and prices going down, that might not be a good thing. We want to potentially we want to launch as prices starting to go up. I would argue. Let's see here. So Simba 369 hexagons can be crazy. They say hex price lower is good because they can dollar cost average. But they say Richard Hart not releasing Pulse Chain now is good because it saves us from the pain of Pulse tanking. Yeah. Yeah, hexagons are crazy. We're a bunch of individuals and we're as diverse as individuals are. Yeah, it's an interesting take. Okay, here's another question. Do you think Richard Hart is timing it, or will he just release when it's ready? I don't know. I do feel that he's probably timing it, because I think he's pretty aware, uh, of how timing can work to his advantage, and there probably are still working on it, and I don't know if it's truly finished or anything, and it's just sitting there. But the way projects go to it's a never-ending to-do list. He can improve it indefinitely forever, and he may just be letting his devs find creative things to do. That's an option. Um, okay. If Pulse launches, won't it change the hex narrative going really down? Um, if the if Pulse launches, won't it change the hex narrative going really down? I'm not sure what you're asking, Tripod. I do think that it could change the hex narrative. Um, we will see. It could draw a lot of attention. There's a lot of potential good that comes from Pulse Chain, um, and a lot of optionality it gives to hex on Pulse. I mean, the fact that the people that are in it now are going to have their hex, Hedron, ICOSA, and a whole bunch of other tokens, not even within, of course, the Richard Hart ecosystem, are going to be automatically copied over there. I think it's going to add a lot of excitement, at least in the short term. Okay, let's see here. Broke boy crypto. Imagine you already covered this, but what was up with that massive Hedron dump? I don't know. That happens. I mean, it's just a part of it. I don't know what was behind that. I didn't hear the leading narrative behind why that dump. Okay. How do you see the future prices of P hex and E hex? Do you think they will have parity? I think that there's going to be efforts to keep their prices relatively locked with liquidity. I would say left to their own, it's unlikely that they would, to me, that they would have the same value. Otherwise, I think one would pull. People tend to like first play. Like, uh, there's going to be a narrative, I suspect, in people's mind, which one is better. There's going to be theories that either p-hex is better or e-hex is better. And if the narrative, it's likely the narrative is just strong one way or the other, and that there's a preference one way or the other. I have a feeling, not necessarily a strong feeling, but I have a feeling that at the beginning, p-hex, the Pulse version of hex, is going to be the one that people really like because the in-stake fees are going to be lower. Longer term, though, I'm curious if Ethereum hex, e-hex, makes a comeback. There's potential improvements to Ethereum where they bring the transaction costs down. It's potential that happens, and some of the reasons that people may like p-hex may actually start coming to e-hex, and long term e-hex may actually be a good one. I'm really glad to have both right now, and we will see. How much does T-share price affect short stakes? Well, if you're going to restake, if your intent is to restake, I would not, like, short stakes are going to give you less yield than long stakes. So they do affect it. But I will also tell you, for what it's worth, speaking of Ethereum transaction fees, short stakes cost a lot less to unstake. So how much does T-share price affect short stakes? That's I don't know. You might want to ask me a more specific question. I can try to answer that one better for you. People are looking out for my nose. Sorry, guys. I'm still a little bit sick. I'm just going to read these on the screen. Chad wants also agree with Maxim in that he's finding ways to keep devs busy and post hoc rationalizing it. Yeah, that's assuming having to do with Pulse Chain and PulseX possibly. There's a chance that that's what he's doing, is timing the market and improving the product. And I do, like I said, things like Pulse Chain you can improve Pulse Chain forever. Okay. Yes, it would be cool to have our own bull market. Even within just Hex, that would be pretty crazy. Here's an SEC question. Do you think the SEC deciding ETH or Pulse is a security is dangerous for Pulse? Yeah. I do. I mean, I don't think it's going to help. The SEC looking into something doesn't, in the short run, make things better. I don't think, if you saw my stream with Stoic from Coast, I mean, Hex specifically seems pretty legit. We'll see what Pulse is like. It's not out yet. I don't know. I feel like the SEC is something that's good after they look into you, but it's pretty scary and it could cause FUD in the meantime. It's kind of my thought on that. I don't know if dangerous is the right word. It could be, but it like, what can they really do if it is decentralized? There's only so much power they have, and they might be able to go after actors like me talking about Pulse, but I don't think they can go. It'll be hard, especially if Pulse is launched, for them to like destroy the system. All right. We might be getting towards the end here. I don't know what this means, but it makes me laugh. Did you just drink your triplex? Okay, here's one. Hi, Maxim. Love your streams. What do you see the price of eHex pumping to once the announcement of Pulse launch comes out? Who knows, man? Who knows? You'd think that the news of Pulse if there's news, if it's not just like we're launching at this date, if there's rumors of it launching either way, you'd think that'd be bullish. You'd think that that would cause excitement to buy Hex because people are going to want their copy. And if nothing else, they're probably going to slow selling. Either one would be bullish for price. It's really hard. I mean, how low will Hex be? What price will Hex be at that time? That's very hard to predict as well. I'm not too into price predictions. Like I said, knowing what price the bottom will be uh, isn't exactly how I think about it. I think about that's a really hard call for me to pick prices. I tend to look at things more from a fundamental aspect and time accordingly. And so that's a hard one. All right, guys. Thanks for all your questions. Okay, here's one. Aisle 2, top 3 notification books you'd recommend to anybody. What do you mean by nonfiction. Wow, I read that wrong. Nonfiction. So, I mean, most of my books are nonfiction. So, what my top books are, tell me if this is answering your question. Tony Robbins, to me, one of his books is just so encompassing of a lot of self-help books. He's got a couple of them, but one of them is called Awaken the Giant Within. That's probably one of my top books to read just because it's going to introduce you to ideas that if you read that book, you're going to read a ton of books at once, in a sense. And I think Richard Hart also talks pretty positively about Tony Robbins, and Awaken the Giant Within is a pretty good book. There's another classic book by Napoleon Hill. Think and Grow Rich is a great book. A lot of the same books that I would talk about are the ones that I posted in that one video. And I love books. But that's a great one. It just covers, Awaken the Giant Within specifically covers just such a wide range of ideas and useful ways of thinking. I think if you read that book and understand it and implement it, you can go really far with just that one book. That's the first one that would come to my mind. I'll comment on this one. Richard Hart blows up when he's mad about something in interview. When an interview says, "Yes, I agree." He didn't used to be that bad, but recently he's just. I hope it doesn't go to his head. I mean, everyone's fallible. Richard Hart is fallible, and there's a problem of people getting something right and getting very narcissistic and prideful because of that, and that being their downfall. And I hope Richard Hart doesn't fall for that. He does have a lot of value to add in what he says, but he could still really hurt himself at the same time. And I hope that doesn't happen. There you go. Think and Grow Rich, Awaken the Giant Within. Anyway, guys, thanks for hanging with me. I hope this was helpful to you. I'm sorry I'm so sick. But I hadn't posted in a while, and I wanted to do this. I wanted to try the live stream out. So thanks for asking your questions and hanging out. And I wish you the very best. Be patient. That's what I'm doing. I want to be careful telling you what to do, but I'm being patient. Let's let this thing play out. Let's try to save up. What I'm doing is saving up money for waiting for the macro environment to shift. And until that appears to be happening, I'm really just being patient and waiting. And I plan to be here. I don't think I'm going away. So we'll see how many people are hanging with me at the end. Thanks, you guys. I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.